Imagine that you are running late for your train home from work or school. As you step onto the platform, you hear the doors beep and begin to close. Being the Chad that you are, you rush towards the train, force open the closing doors, and jump on board. You have proved your Herculean strength, and now you can be sure that you will make it home in time to watch the newest episode of The Big Bang Theory.
Penny.
Sheldon.
Bazinga!
By doing this, you've avoided wasting 15 minutes of your time, but have caused a 10 or so second delay for everyone else on the train. This is an example of an externality, which is a cost or benefit that is incurred by a party who did not choose to incur that cost or benefit. Your choice to get on the train resulted in a delay for others, i.e. a cost, that they did not choose to incur. Now that we have a basic idea of what an externality is, let's hop on board the economics train, don't worry, we're running on time, and see where it takes us. To make things easier, let's now consider some market for a good. To begin, we consider only benefits and costs that are directly incurred by those transacting. These benefits and costs are named private benefits and private costs, as opposed to lieutenant benefits and lieutenant costs. Let's visualize the market outcomes when we consider private benefits and private costs. We need to draw two curves, a private marginal benefit curve and a private marginal cost curve. The private marginal benefit curve is downward sloping, which reflects that the consumer gets diminishing return from consuming more product, i.e. moving from 0 to 1
Apple
of uniform size provides lots of benefit, but moving from 37 to 38, not so much.
How many are there?
36. Counted them myself.
36! Well, last year I had 37!
Well, some of them are quite a bit bigger than last year.
I don't care how big they are!
This means that a lower price is required to incentivize consumption of the marginal unit as consumption increases. The private marginal cost curve is upward sloping, which reflects diminishing marginal returns of production. Consider Santa's factory making presents. In the short run, the setup of the factory cannot change, so there cannot be changes to machinery, only labour. At first, increasing the number of elves producing presents leads to a large increase in quantity produced. However, as the production line gets more and more cramped, the additional elf employed produces fewer and fewer presents. With diminishing marginal returns of production, Santa must charge a higher price at higher levels of output.
Does he have any special wishes?
Let's see.
2 number 45s, 1 with cheese, and a large soda.
The intersection of these two curves is the market outcome, i.e. the market price and market quantity. This is what would happen in the market if decisions were made without accounting for how consumption or production affects the other market participants. Although this outcome may align with what is socially optimal, it often won't. We term such a situation as a market failure. So why might they not align? Well, if you remember the train example, your selfish decision to get on the train led to a delay being faced by other members of society. This would mean that the socially optimal choice might be you waiting and playing, for example, Raid Shadow Legends available on iPhone and Android, rather than jumping on board of the train, which would be your privately optimal choice. What we can see from this example is that the socially optimal decision and the privately optimal decision do not always align, and so externalities are a form of market failure. On our drawing, we can illustrate this by considering two additional curves, the social marginal benefit curve and the social marginal cost curve. These are similar to the private cost and private benefit curves, except they may be adjusted, for example, shifted based on whether the consumption or production of the good has a negative impact or a positive impact on the rest of society. The point at which these two curves intersect is the socially optimal outcome. So now we have two outcomes, a market outcome and a socially optimal outcome. To keep things simple, let's assume that the only reason for a mismatch between these outcomes is the presence of externalities. We have three cases that can occur in the market. The boring case, which I like to refer to as the crimes of Grindelwald case, where the amount of goods produced is just right, the case where there is an underproduction of the good, and the case where there is an overproduction of the good. An underproduction of a good is the consequence of a positive externality. Because the good results in larger benefits or lower costs than are being considered by those transacting, the optimal level of production is going to be lower in the private case than the social case. Let's consider a simple example of vaccinations. Suppose that we are in some imaginary universe where vaccines are good for you and do not give your children autism. By immunising your child, you make it less likely that others will get sick. If individuals do not consider this benefit that they impose on others, there would likely be less demand and consequently a lower quantity than socially optimal. Graphically, this translates to the private marginal benefit curve being to the left of the social marginal benefit curve, and with no difference between private and social marginal cost curves, the social optimal outcome is to the right of the private or market outcome. Following from our definition, a positive externality can also occur when the social marginal cost curve is shifted shifted right relative to the private marginal cost curve. An overproduction of a good is a consequence of a negative externality. Because a good results in larger costs or lower benefits than are being considered by those transacting, the optimal level of production is going to be higher in the private case than the social case. Consider a factory that, as a byproduct of production, produces lots of pollution.
Disgusting!
Say the firm produces cat leashes. In this case, the cost the firm faces to produce an additional good will be lower than the social cost of producing additional good. This being as, the social cost will be comprised of not only the cost of production, but the cost of pollution. Graphically, we have that the private marginal cost is going to be shifted to the left of the social marginal cost curve. With no difference in marginal benefit curves, we have that there will be an oversupply of cat leashes. But of course, one cat leash is too many. We could also have a case where social marginal benefit is to the left of private marginal benefit, which is also a negative externality. Now, we may want to intervene to return the market outcome to the social optimum. The notion is that we want the firm or consumer to internalize the externality, i.e. make the private curves align with the social curves, or more simply, the private outcome align with the social outcome. For instance, we could consider a subsidy on vaccinations to increase the market quantity, or we could consider a tax on pollution to decrease the market quantity. There are a load of ways that this can be done, and it's a useful exercise to brainstorm them. And that's about it. If you're interested in diving deeper into economics, there are plenty of introductory books for you to read. LibGen.io is one way that I hear people get hold of such books. The book that I read in my introductory microeconomics class was by Robert Pindick, which is good, especially because of his last name. Thanks for watching. If you have any concepts you'd like covered or any feedback, be sure to let me know.